Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and once again, Sai is with me.
This is Side, and once again, I'm with Lucid.
I believe, what did we say it was? Turn 81, actually.
Oh,
It
81.
is, yeah, early winter in year six. And
We,
do you remember the summary of the last couple episodes?
yeah, so the last two episodes that we did were very slow, or rather, they were quick in terms of video because the turns were slow. So the major thing that we'd seen had been 3 turns ago with Gath revealing their dream horror setup. And since then, we've just been seeing the continuous slow grinding down of TNT and Vaettiheim, with Vaettiheim basically holed up in their capital, looking to make it as prickly as possible so that Shivalba doesn't jump on them and take it. Meanwhile, TNT's basically just been bleeding ground. They haven't been able to take a major engagement with one of their attempts, where they were going to stop Agartha getting caught up because their commander bringing the elf had been assassinated, and their
Yeah.
other stuff not really going super well. So while they'd managed to do a fair amount of damage to Erythia in particular with traps, they haven't managed to have as much of a showing these last couple of turns, partially just because of bad luck, and partially just because of the fact that they're really running out of steam. Like in terms of like how many resources they have available to deploy, they're very low on Astral. So even in like the one situation where things did go well, they got their Astral Mage magic dueled.
Yeah.
So basically, TNT is because of how many resources were expended in their earlier attempts at fighting off Pangea, they just don't have a lot left at this point.
Right. Yeah, they're basically, TNG's kind of staying alive because of Vengeful Water. They would probably be pinned into their cap now if they didn't have that. Um,
Right. And Vengeful is causing damage, and they're actually even being kind enough to provide us with reports about the damage
right.
that Vengeful is causing, which I appreciate. Um, but it's still to be said that they're not in a great place, nor do they seem to have a path to recovery.
Yeah, it's looking rough. We got the battle report here for Vengeful Waters. 9 sages killed because I believe Pan was trying to siege down one of TNG's forts this previous turn with a pretty significant army. On top of a province with a pretty high TNG dominion as well. 3 scouts, 3 Dukados, 2 priests, 1 mystic, 1 lich. Killed 2 pans. That's kind of impressive. Pans are kind of tough to kill in assassination battles often.
Yeah, they're beefy boys.
Yeah. King of both worlds and the queen of both worlds. So got both. He got the Erythia's power couple.
That's
And
fun. Yeah.
yeah, 3 tarts of Ducado, a worm mage, and a golem survived, and Pan's horror survived. That horror actually is really good for fighting into like Wind of Death traps.
Yeah, because it
So
has that
it's
high
kind of cool.
MR.
Right. And it can just like insta jump on the back line. So it can be really hard. TNT would love to just have a few guys and have somebody cast, Wind of Death a few times. But
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, if you're trying to do like a trap setup, the horror basically invalidates it because it instantly gets to the caster.
right. I think in Dominions Enhanced, there's something called like the Displacer Beast or something. And it also has teleport, so it can also like instantly jump on the back line. It's kind of cool.
Is it scriptable?
Yeah, that one is.
Oh,
So,
well, it's better than a horror then.
well, the stats aren't that great, but it's
Oh, okay.
still, it's pretty good. All right, we're doing Iron Walls at Pythium to continue to stall the game a bit longer. Interesting.
I guess that's
Uh,
where. So Pythium, I assume he's referring to the capital. But
right.
yeah, I assume that that's where there's like insufficient siege force such that they can make it so that holding up the walls is actually, as they put it, stalling out the game as opposed to just being like a gesture.
Yeah, it would be interesting if I wonder who he could court. If he could court somebody to help Flames from the Sky this army. I think there's enough Centaur Sages here. If there's 200, I think this is now in the realm where you try to hit it with like 3 or 4 Flames from the Sky.
Yeah, that'd be worth it.
But yeah. But there's also not a lot of candles left. I don't know how many there were the previous turn, but there's only 3 TNG candles left. So the odds of actually killing these Centaur Sages are not terribly high anymore. The real value he gets out of Iron Walls, on one hand, it can slow it down. But if you're making them slow down while they're sitting on a fort with like 8 or 9 of your Vengeful Water candles, that can hurt a lot.
Right. Similar to having a fort stuffed with dryads or whatever. It's basically just like an assassination setup.
Yeah. And here he's got a mountain of harpies that are storming in conjunction with a horror. And the horror jumps back here. Did he kill somebody? We need to make sure we read the rest of the messages. If I get distracted by the first message,
Then we never get to the end.
we never get to the end. Oh man, that horror really just went straight for the commanders. Somehow 44 harpies still died, but
Pretty normal.
yeah.
That's what harpies do.
But they can afford, and the Dominion pressure from Pangea must be pretty big now, because there were, I believe, 8 or 9 candles here last turn, and now there's 5. And I doubt this is from preaching. I think this is just from every single province having a temple in it, and a fort in most cases. So yeah, the wall of Dominion is getting pushed back as well. Let's finish the messages here. A message from Pangea. I can barely remember the last months. If I close my eyes, I can see fleeting moments of past turns. When there were still 16 players. When our income was still under 2,000. No, it can't have happened. My memories must be wrong.
Do you think he's referring to months or game months? Because I could believe either one at this point.
It was really funny. There was some discussion in the tournament finals thread, and I was like, guys, why is this called? Because in our Discord, it's called the 2022 finals. Like, why is this called the 2022 finals? It's 2024, and they're like, dude, we started this over 2 years ago. That was the thing I didn't realize. It's over 2 years ago was when the original rounds of the tournament started. So this really has been just an epic undertaking getting this done.
Absolutely massive grind, yeah.
Yeah.
Props to the players for sticking through it for all this time, for sure.
Right. The game itself, I think, is nearing a year, like the finals, but the actual, like the whole lead up with the qualifiers and stuff is what started a long time ago.
Right.
All right. Dominions is not a game where you carefully choose the mix of troops you will recruit or where you fashion delicate scripts for your thugs. No, it is a game where you double empower Tartans to craft a counter to Winds of Death, where you fort every province you have, where Vengeful Waters is just a scratch. 'Tis a place where you wish for royal Malaquies or floating mines and spend 100 of gems to take one fort. Well, that's interesting because royal Malaquies might be what he needs to fight off those
Dream horrors.
The dream horrors. Yeah. Because if he can get it before anti-magic goes up and he gets multiple casts, like 4 or 5 casts, that could be it.
I was more just thinking of the impact of the spell itself, like the fact that, there's your fast, the Arcane Domination caster.
Yeah. I was thinking Master and Slave, but Arcane Domination is probably better in that case.
I mean, if your only target is a magic beings, then it's essentially doing the same thing.
Right, just a little cheaper and better.
Since it's a lower level spell, then the overcast threshold is lower.
Right. They will still have things to figure out with how they wire them into communion, because like ideally you want to do these things turn 0 before anti-magic goes up, but it's going to be tricky with your people that aren't innate magic casters that are doing communion slave. So
right.
I don't know how that's something you can manage in multiple ways, but I'll be interested to see what they do if they do that. We never left the craziness of the late game qualifiers we never left the craziness of the late game of qualifier number 13. We were reborn into it, molded by it. Everything else is a lie. It's a funny message. Qualifier number 13 had it was one of the last games to finish, if I recall. And I think there were a lot of subs in the game too. I think this
very reminiscent of a tournament finals indeed.
Right. I think Zan was in this. I can't remember who else was in it, but they had crazy things. Like there were huge blood powers. There were people with huge globals. It was like a pretty intense late game from what I recall.
Well, they got their practice in then.
I think too, it's actually kind of funny. I think because at some point we're going to put a turn limit on these qualifiers. They're going too long. So it's going to be at this point, we're going to reduce the throne requirement. At this point, we're going to reduce the throne requirement. And I had a voting process where people could weigh in, something like that. And so they all weighed in and they all sent me messages. And I'm pretty sure every single one of the players voted for the longer timeline because they thought they were all scaling the hardest.
Aha.
So they were like,
The myth
more
of
time is
scaling.
better for me, says literally every player in the game.
The
And it's
myth of
pretty funny.
scaling. Yeah.
Yeah. Your scaling is very visible to you, but sometimes other players' scaling is a little bit invisible.
And theirs is always better when you're talking to other players.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah. In your own mind, you're like, oh, my scaling's the best. And when you're talking to everybody, you're like, oh my God, this person's scaling so hard. All right, you want to do the Gath message for us?
Score. A few points this turn. The first ever horror mark attack just happened, and 6 Brass Claws ate alive my equipped Astral Gadol, casting Defiler of Dreams. 5 shock resistance was nearly not enough. If he cast Blessing, he would have lived easily, but apparently Enslaved Mind is a better spell in that situation. That was a super unlucky roll overall, and it sets us behind in Defiler of Dream production, because we not only lost the gear, but we are also limited by casters, and we haven't got new Astral Gadol since I told you about it. This makes Gift of Health even more important for us to heal the 5 Soulless Gadols that got muted. The next PvE round is happening next turn anyway. It is quite sad to see Shivalba selling this many Aitsab to Pan for gold. I was only eager to sell Blood Slaves for gems, but Shib is apparently satisfied with gold. This alone actually makes Pangea the third major blood power, able to produce a lot of vamps, Pan Assassins, or whatever else, adding a lot to his power level.
Yep.
I wouldn't be
Message.
super worried about non-native blood nations catching up, mostly just because of the scalability of it. Like kind of like I know we were just talking about scaling, but like part of the appeal of being a native blood nation is that you can spend your gold on these, blood mages and basically get gem economy for gold economy. Whereas like a non-native blood nation, even though sure, they can do nasty stuff with blood, Pangaea in particular being one of the nations that can actually get quite a lot out of it, it still can't ever really get to the scale that a true blood nation can get, just in terms of like how much they
Yeah,
can get out of their blood.
right. Yeah, I think that's right. But I mean, being able to have it where you kind of casually have blood at every single fight, I think is still, because there's like, okay, I've broken into it. I can like make a few items. Then there's, I've broken into it. I can have like a vampire lord in my 2 major armies. Then there's like, I can have vampire lords sort of wherever I want or need them, you know?
Mm.
And then there's like the full blood, like if you're a blood nation where it's like most of my economy is driven by blood. I've got blood armies, I've got blood rituals, I've got all the things. And that's that final part is the thing Pan can't really even dream of, you know?
They just can't get there. But you're right,
Yeah.
yeah, that it's still relevant having that many vamp lords around. But you also don't really need that many, I don't think. Like they're big casters, right? So they do
Yeah.
big caster things, and you're kind of okay with just having a handful of them in order to cast, Rush of Strength and so on.
Yeah, but being able to put up like life after death traps. I mean, not life after death, life for a life traps, or they're good raiders, and I mean, it's
Oh,
certainly
I'm not
nice.
saying, yeah, they're
Yeah,
great. I love having them. I'm just saying that like uh the difference excuse me, the difference between how much power he has now compared to later isn't going to be that
right.
significant, I don't think.
Yeah, but being able to have 40 vamps that you can script around, that is a reasonable aspiration for Pan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Vaettiheim. Well, there's a chance I'll be dom killed this turn trying to survive, but my candles are really low. Down to 7 this turn. 2 bloodsack neighbors and a temple discount nation is really tough for Dominion. Yeah, Pan's slamming Dominion. So, and we looked at, and Pan's not even top of the graphs. Zabalba and Gath were the last time we looked.
Yeah, and what's funny about Pan Slaving Dominion is it's literally just from temples. Like they don't have
Yeah,
any blood sack, they don't have bonuses, they just have
yeah,
that many temples.
yeah. For every province, a temple. I'd branch out and attack, but while they've accepted a sort of status quo, I'd branch out and attack, but while they've accepted a sort of status quo here, the moment I branch out, I'll see retaliation from all my neighbors. So, still not really sure if there's anything I could have done. I'm fairly confident that any attempt I would have had, I would have made to push out would have just gotten me killed quicker. Either as I commit to holding provinces only half the time, or being able to kill both mass horror spam, disease demons, bone grinder, or grinder god threat, even holding provinces half the time was a losing deal, as I'd still need to spend a couple gems. I only get a couple gems back if it's a good province. No real way to get aggressive with the massed threat of magic phase. I wasn't strong enough to be able to eat a bunch of magic face attacks and still win an army fight versus any of them.
Yeah,
Hopefully, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I think that's a fair analysis that, like, he was already beaten back, like, even when he had all these resources. So trying to push out now is kind of a losing proposition.
Yeah, I think that's I yeah. My thought on that is like, let me go to Vaettiheim. So like forted stuff, I don't think there's really much point. This is probably a Citadel of Power too, yeah. So it looks like Zabalba is also doing like magic phase temple or fort pushing into Vaettiheim. In that case, I think there's really nothing you can do. And places like this where it's like maybe we, you know, can raid stuff back. There's no gym income from this. It gives like some of these provinces have gym income. The nice thing about putting rating pressure on is you can get, you can start that rating game where you're making them invest something and then you're doing something unpredictable or trying to kill their investment. So there
Yeah,
is
like
value in just keeping some pressure on to just make it a game. I think that's almost always the optimal move. But at the same time, if you don't have gyms, you're gonna have to like do the rating almost entirely gold based or some, like I don't know. It's tough. It's a losing fight.
Yeah, he is at the point where I think he's kind of recognized that he's completely out of the game. So anything that he's trying is basically just to be spiteful or try to do a trick. Generally, when I'm in like these like subbing into a situation like this, like any sort of last stand thing, I'm just trying to see if I can do something cool, right? Rather than
Right.
like trying to find the angle that lets you actually win. And I kind of think that's where Vaettiheim is at this point. Like maybe he can do something cool
Yeah.
in this fight or whip out a cool thug or whatever, but there's no realistic chance of him actually like winning or even holding on to ground if he's able to push someone back for a few turns.
Yeah, the thing I would try to do is to probably try to get Zabalba to do a medium high commitment and then try to take a fight and then because I don't actually particularly want to stay in a game and hit in turn, you know, but I also don't want to like just give things. So, to the people who killed me. So I would probably like put things on his force, maybe feint back and gym bait, right? Or move and patrol back onto my cap and try to like think maybe he's going to dodge my force, but jump on my cap and then I get the battle I want. Like I'm going to try to do
Find ways to
weird,
do damage.
right? Find ways to do damage, but also I kind of want to expose myself because like I want to take a battle where you can take my cap eventually. Like to me, sitting in my capital for 20 turns isn't a lot of fun. But other players, it is a way to do damage, right? So it's not. It's a totally valid strategy.
Yeah, it really just depends on what you're prioritizing.
Yeah. I'll hopefully survive a bit longer. I'm just hoping to outlast Agartha and keep Illwinter and Maelstrom up as long as possible. Well, that's that's
go.
also another factor, right? Yeah, having Maelstrom, I forgot about that. That's a big deal for gym income, and that also gives him the ability to potentially king make a little bit. Both those spells.
Dumping gems at someone, yeah.
Right.
Or murdering Winter, being
Yeah.
the extra source of that. That's always fun.
Yeah. Summoning sea trolls or something, having just a boatload of them, or who knows.
Yeah, you can find ways to ruin people's day.
Yeah. Moving my god underwater, and I've also been getting bishop fish, arranging my preaching order to max my candles there. Having holy ones preach before holy twos, before holy threes is kind of important if you can arrange it. How do you do that?
Huh. Yeah, I didn't know that you could control a turn order anymore. Like I knew that you could in 4, but I didn't think that that was like even a thing you could do at all in 5.
Does it matter the order you select and like tell people to preach? Is that how you used to be able to do it?
It was in name order. Everything was in unit ID order. Similar to casting.
Okay, well, then you wouldn't be able to control which order holy ones, holy twos, holy threes go, right? Because
well, you can queue them up, right? Like you basically put in your holy ones, holy twos, holy threes, right? Because assuming that you have multiples of each, you just send them to different places based on who would get to preach first.
Okay.
Well, in this case, he's in a cap siege, right? So it doesn't matter. But in
I think he
4,
was saying he was putting them here, right? So he was saying he's put his god here, and it makes actually a lot of sense to put your preaching in an isolated lake because candles are less likely to cross the land-water boundary. So if he can preach up really high here, there's a decent chance he can keep enemy candles from coming in. Whereas it's a lot harder to do that in a land province surrounded by other land provinces.
Makes sense. But yeah, I don't know how relevant that is for his current situation. Being in the cat mode. So outside of like keeping himself literally alive, right, like preventing the actual incidental dom kill. Yeah, I don't think that he's got much else going on in terms of preaching stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if his goal is to keep these globals up, it's possible, especially with this preaching situation he has. He can keep his god, whoever's controlling the globals, and then enough preachers in this underwater province that he could stay in the game for the rest of the game.
Until
So,
someone decides to send a bunch of storm demons underwater.
yeah. No, I mean, that's kind of true.
I think that either Shivalba or Pan could pretty easily take an underwater province off of Vaettiheim. If push came to shove and they're like, I really need to get rid of these annoying spells, they could take it.
I don't know. If he brings 60 Rimvetti, I think it would be really tough because he has the shock resistance bless. So they would be pretty good against storm demons.
That's true. And they're naturally good against water elementals.
Yeah. So, you know, it's possible he could see the end of the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's just he's not really ever going to do damage outside of his globals that way. So.
Right. But the globals are impactful. I mean, Illwinter is going to be messing with Gath potentially for the rest of the game.
Yeah, we've kind of talked to death about Gath's logistical issues, but Illwinter definitely impacts that pretty substantially.
And Zabalba, it's going to make it where Zabalba can barely use mages. In some ways, him keeping the Illwinter caster alive, like him keeping it up, in one way is like spiting the people who are killing him. In another way, it's actually like validating their decision to kill him because it's like it is an impactful spell.
Yeah.
All right, the underwater should help let Zabalba and Panda Candles fight a bit, going around the underwater, but no telling. They've got a ton of temple checks going out, a few bad rolls, and I'll be gone. It's fair.
Yeah, especially given that these are both Bloodsack nations.
Yeah. A lot of Holy Threes underwater, though. I think it's going to be tough. The only thing that is that the way candle spreading works is preaching happens first. So he can maybe guarantee he preaches it up to 7, but then he's going to have 0 of the normal temple checks. And so if they ever get lucky and like 10 or something temple checks head underwater, and then those win their rolls against his candles, he could still get dom killed. So
yeah,
it's very hard to survive on preaching alone. But if you were going to do it, this would be the perfect spot. Because it's like, you've got 2 nations' dominions that are running into each other, so you're not likely to be surrounded by like fully 10 candles, and you're in an isolated lake.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like I mean, yeah, I still rate his chances as being pretty bad, but he's making the most of what he can with what he has.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what's happening in TNG's part of the world. We get any cool battles? Let's do it from here and make sure we don't
spoil any that we would catch.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think there's much, so we'll do it from the map. TNG attacking Erythia, just 1 PD. Special monsters attacking Erythia. Gath apparently sent a small squad that died. Erythia had a scout that got patrolled out. TNG's got a huge army here, but it does not look like they're making any moves to defend Pythium, which is understandable.
Well, Pythium was the one where he said he was putting up iron walls. So he's not like defending it so much as he is making it more annoying to take it.
Right. It would be funny to just try to bait them with an army to do Vortex of Returning again. That would be... I think you get like YouTube gold. That would be YouTube gold. If you could bait him into doing Vortex of Returning with like probably just like a bait squad, like a bait army where you just have things like sparsely spread out. So it's going to take forever for Gifts of Heaven to kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you wait for them to Vortex out. Like save. But if he saw this whole army here, he might be like, okay, we're going to have especially if you magic phase attacked this, so he didn't get to see like what your army was. And so he has to like blind fight an army. I bet you he would do the conservative, like, okay, we'll nuke it and then vortex out. And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
potentially you get to just alleviate the siege.
Pan's
Send
actually
all these guys
tried.
back to home.
Pan's been actually trying or sorry, TNG's actually tried to bait out Vortex before, I think, because we kind of
Yeah,
talked about like that was most likely what we were looking at with that one army. So it hasn't been successful so far. Not to say that, it can't work, just that it hasn't worked so far.
right. Yeah, it will be
And
tricky to do.
I think part of it is just that Pan is more confident now, right? So like
Right,
if you can actually win the engagements, you don't need to do the conservative Vortex play at all.
right. That's true. Very true. Okay. I think that's basically it. I don't think too much has happened.
Yeah, it was another pretty easy turn, and I expect we're going to be seeing like these relatively low impact turns for a little bit longer, just on account of the fact that we still have these folks that are hanging on, and until they're actually dead, the people fighting them don't really have much incentive to go move on and do something else.
Right. All right. Well, I think we'll end it here. No need to carry on talking about this. So we'll see you guys in the next episode. It'll be episode 82 or turn 82. So yeah, we'll see you then.